Welcome to Active Reload episode 81, a special episode in VR. This is a VR-centric episode with special guest, Steve.
How we doing?
And he's a VR specialist. He set this up in VRchat. We are currently in VRchat, the free-to-play. I don't even know if is this a game? I'm a noob.
We are in a VR world right now.
This is.
I can give you a VR high five right here.
Yeah. Welcome to Active Reload. And I'm a default robot, which I think he looks pretty cool. So we're gonna talk about VR this episode. I'm gonna ask Steve a couple questions, and me and Steve and another coworker, Aaron, who's not here, we play VR once a week usually, and
every Thursday we try,
and we have a lot of fun, play a lot of different games, and we never. Active Reload never really talks about VR other than games that are releasing and some of the experience I have. But now we're deep diving into a big VR episode. So
it doesn't get more VR than this right here.
In a VRchat interview on a podcast. And I'm banging my head everywhere.
Did you just hit the microphone?
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
It's okay. So first question. What was your very first VR, Steve? And what was your VR moment, the wow moment that everybody has in VR?
Okay, my first VR moment was not my wow moment. My first moment in VR was actually Google Cardboard.
Oh no.
Where you had that little phone and you'd put it in a cardboard box and you would strap it to your face.
Oh yeah, and your eyes would burn.
Your eyes would cross. You would feel a little sick. And it was interesting, but it wasn't like that VR experience thing that I was hoping for. That was like, I was like, this is not the future.
Oh, I totally understand. I did that first. I don't even consider that a VR moment, but I guess it is. I had one of those Google Cardboards, or I used one, and it was a movie, like a short animated film, where I was the point of view of the camera, and all these little animated bunnies and stuff were running around me.
I tried somebody else's headset out, and I think I was in a library, and it was like the first big VR that came out.
Oh, okay.
And I was in a library, and a T-Rex walks across or like down the hallway, and then stomps towards you, and it had like motion. You still had to like be hooked up to wires and hooked up to a computer, and it was my friend's VR, and you had to have trackers in the corners. But it was unreal. Fast forward to like a few years later, the Quest 2s came out.
Yep, that's what I'm using right now.
And I was blown away. It was a whole crazy experience. Like, I met friends on here, and we would
chat here. We're
in VR through a game called Breachers, right?
Oh yeah, Breachers. Yeah.
And they were like, hey, come out, hang out with us in VRchat. And I was like, what is VRchat? And we would come in here and watch TV shows and movies with people in VR.
I think that's awesome. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think my biggest wow moment was with you.
Yeah.
And I think you know which one it is. We were playing Contractors, the Battle Royale version. So whatever that is.
Yeah.
Showdown.
Contractors Showdown, yep.
And we had played a couple rounds already. I was getting my bearings, and I had been playing VR a little bit, but I was still kind of settling in. And we parachuted, and I landed on a windmill about 100 feet up from the ground, and you landed on the ground below. And I waved at you.
I remember you were on top of like a windmill, right?
And then you waved back at me, and I immediately had this moment. I'm like, whoa, it just took me out. We just experienced something that you can't have in a regular video game. if it was a 2D video game, let's say we were playing Call of Duty Warzone, and I landed on a windmill and I waved at you or emoted at you some way, it's really doesn't make a big difference. But when I waved and you saw me wave, and then you waved back, it just hit me. I was like, wow, that's just, the scale is just ridiculous. And then
I think you said something like, wow, that was crazy.
yeah, I had like a little out of body experience. I don't know. It sounds dorky to say it, but it was true. And then plus that match when we start to go house to house and start shooting. And then I was like, wow, this is what I like about VR. I like the experience that you can't get anywhere else. And another time, around the same time, I was playing Pavlov, which is one of my favorite shooters in VR. And some guy on my team, I don't know, handed me a grenade. He was like, hey, like, you put your hand right here. And so I put my hand out like this, and he popped a grenade in there. And then he was like, pull the pin. And I was like
motioning it to you, right?
Yeah, and I pulled the pin, and then he put his hands on his head. And then I tossed it, and it exploded, and we kind of did a little funny dance. And I was like, wow, that was another experience.
That's a VR moment.
That is only experienced in VR. It's just hilarious.
So one of my first moments in not Contractors, Breachers, which is like Rainbow Six Siege in VR, right?
Yeah. We've talked about it on Active Release a couple times, yeah.
And so I'm new to the game. I'm running around making tons of noise, and this person comes up next to me, and they're like, they go like this, and they're like,
oh, like shush?
And he's like, hey, we got to be quiet. They can hear us. And then he starts pointing like the direction I need to go. I'm like, you can't do that in any other game. He was like, hey, we need to go over here. And he's like, hey, cover me. I'm going this way.
Okay.
And I was like, are you serious? Video games have changed for me.
Yeah. You are now making signs. So like,
yeah,
I think that's really cool. Now, I had a couple of other questions for you.
Yeah.
What advancements in VR hardware are you most excited about? I know that you have, when the Quest 3 came out, you were really excited about it, and you sold me your old Quest 2, which is what I'm using right now. Before I had a Quest 2, I had a PlayStation VR 2, and I still think the PSVR 2 is really, really cool.
It's really advanced.
It's just the games and the connectivity to PC with Quest is just, it beats it by a mile. Have you seen any new advancements? I know the pass-through is really cool. I don't experience that with 2.
So for the Quest 3, the pass-through was huge for me, not just for games, but more like productivity and fun. I can double tap the side of my head on my device.
Yeah.
And now instead of seeing the game world, I see the real... Oh, I just hit the microphone.
I know,
like
it's okay.
Okay, so I see the real world in front of me. However, I can have objects in that real world. I can have a browser open. I can have YouTube open over here. I could do whatever I want. And then there's certain games that can bring game objects into your pass-through real world. Or I can lay in bed, or sit on the couch, and I can turn on a hockey game on a screen size whatever I want. And I'm in my real room, seeing my real wall or ceiling, and I'm watching hockey or a movie.
Yeah.
And I can still interact with the people around me. It's insane, really.
Yeah, that is really cool. I actually, what is that called? Let's say AR. So there's virtual reality, and then there's
it's kind of like AR. Yeah.
Okay. Augmented reality.
Yep, that's it.
Where it's almost like you could play a game of chess on your real life, table.
Yeah, definitely.
But a virtual game of chess. See, I think of my favorite thing to think about the future of VR is it really doesn't have anything to do with gaming, actually.
Yeah.
Even though I do like VR games a lot, which we'll get into in a couple minutes. But I think the future is in like climbing Mount Everest or learning how to do surgery, stuff like that. And another thing I really like about VR and MetaQuest is courtside seats.
Yeah. watching sports. You can actually watch basketball.
Yeah.
From the court side in VR live.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look at high five. Just shoot some basketballs.
Yeah.
Playing in this or hanging out in VR right now is really hard to not play around. I want to like move around and dance.
You see that a lot, like especially when you in like VRchat, when you see a group of people, they're usually in front of a mirror.
Oh, okay.
Like watching themselves move, because it's a very like surreal moment.
Yeah.
Seeing your own representation of yourself.
Yeah, it is really
in a mirror,
tricky.
and then like when you're talking, your mouth is moving, and you can do like hand gestures.
I think VR is awesome. Speaking of video games,
yes.
Do you have a top 3 favorite video games in VR, or at least the ones that you really like or recommend?
I've got 3.5.
Heck yeah, I got 5.
Okay,
so.
Let's go. I could go to 5. My first one, of course, is the first real game I played in VR, which took me a while. I wasn't able to move around with the joystick in VR without getting a little nauseous, so it took me about a month. I had to do just stuff where you would just stand there or like click to move and teleport. So that it isn't like a time investment, but Breachers was my first favorite game in VR for sure.
Yeah, if you like Rainbow Six Siege style gameplay, close quarters,
it's like a SWAT style,
one shot, one kill type of thing.
One team is taking turns being the attackers, and then the defenders, and then you swap.
Yeah, and
tons of fun.
You breach through. It's like literal breachers, and I played that game too. The only problem I had with that game, and that's definitely up there for me, but the competitiveness is too crazy. Some people who play that game do not miss whatsoever.
Some people need to go outside and touch grass.
I mean, I don't know why you would. I don't know if you can tell, viewers, but we're in the Cyberpunk 2077 default apartment right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
This
it looks
is
really
where
good.
I've taken home Pan Am a couple times. So, yeah, you got another one?
Second one was gonna have to be Ghost of Tabor. That was one of my favorite games.
Yep.
Still is. We jump in there from time to time.
Definitely mine.
Especially now that they have PvE mode, so us as like a group of friends can go in and play against just bots.
Just bots.
And not get trashed by
I know it's really
some
funny.
amazing players.
We played just bots because we didn't want to get trashed, and then we ended up getting trashed still.
The
some
bots
of the bots
are really good.
They that came with an upgrade to all the bots.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite VR game.
We've had some great moments in Ghost of Tabor.
I really like extraction shooters. But I think that extraction shooters have a permanent home in VR. It's just a lot more immersive in VR when you can actually grab something, look at it, pull your backpack off, put it in your backpack, stuff like that, as opposed to playing Tarkov, where you look at a menu.
Yeah, you're in a menu system.
And you're swapping menu systems. So it takes you out of it. In VR, you have to crouch down, pull your backpack off, and organize your backpack in real time or virtual time.
What I love is I'm like, hey, you need a bandage, and I can throw you a bandage. You can catch it and then bandage yourself, and then we go on our way.
I think that's really cool. It's also very tactical. So that's probably my favorite all-time
I
VR
also had
game.
a wow moment. We were in Ghost of Tabor, and we are inside of a building, and there's some bad guys, some real people outside shooting at us, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there was a bot that was down right next to us.
I know what you're talking
about. And I
about.
remember picking up the bot and like holding him up like Weekend at Bernie's.
Yep.
And he's like, I'm holding him up against the window.
Yeah, you put his head through the window.
They started shooting at the bot that I was holding up.
It's like the whole thing like sticking up like a stick with a World War II helmet over a trench.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that. It was funny. I think I got shot in the shoulder too.
That was a good VR moment.
That was. And then I think around that same time when Aaron, not pictured here, but Aaron, our friend, tried to make a jump that this guy would make too easily, and Aaron fell to his death.
No, I think Aaron made that one, and I missed the jump, and I died.
Okay.
And you guys
Well, I just laughed.
lived on without me.
That's another thing in video games when you're playing co-op with friends in regular flat games. It gets a little stale sometimes, quicker, I should say.
Yeah.
So games get stale quicker. In VR, we were playing Tarkov game, Tabor.
Yeah, Ghost of
And
Tabor.
even the most mundane things became insanely memorable and funny. I haven't laughed so hard in video games in a long time. And so that I experienced when I was younger playing with friends, I'm experienced now in VR in a new way to play. And I think that is awesome.
I think it's crazy. Like when you need to drink water in the game, you actually have to take the lid off and drink the water, or you have to like manipulate your firearm and like check it. And it's wild.
Another game that I really like is Pavlov.
That's a great one.
I think Pavlov is a good intro to shooters for VR. The graphics are really good, and it has a really realistic feel to it when it comes to guns and reloading and charging and stuff like that. So all my gun enthusiast friends that want to get into VR, I always suggest Pavlov. The only thing is it's not very casual. You have to stand and play, and it's hardcore is a good word for that.
Next up on my list would be Contractors Exfil, but that's kind of
same thing.
It's the same thing as Ghost of Tabor in a way.
It's also really good for Tabor for competition because Exfil is really, really good. I think it's still in alpha, maybe beta now, but it's really polished and it has a lot more quality of life adjustments that Tabor doesn't have. But there's 2 Exfil games that are excellent on VR. And
definitely top notch part of VR.
Is there a single player experience game that you like?
There's one that's co-op and single player. It's Demio. It's like a strategy board game style, Dungeons and Dragons kind of style.
It's like a turn-based strategy, Baldur's Gate, D&D in someone's basement, but you can zoom in on the board.
Absolutely love it.
It's I played the demo with you guys. I had no idea how fun it was going to be. Like just zooming in and seeing your board.
You get to play cards for your characters.
Yeah,
and
it's a solid turn-based strategy game, but a lot more fun simply being in the same room as everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just cool.
You can play that one co-op. You can play that one single player. Tons of fun.
Yeah. Another one of my all-time favorites is Gran Turismo 7. I'm a big, everybody knows.
I haven't played that.
It's on PS5.
Okay.
And it's compatible with VR2. And it's definitely the most visually impressive VR game I've had. Although you don't do much. You sit in a car.
Right.
But it's very realistic. You can look everywhere. I had my old car that was totaled from hail. It's in that game, and seeing it's a Dodge Charger, and seeing it in the virtual world, it just kind of blew my mind. It's one of those games where you can just pick up and play very easily, very big or easy casual VR game, but it's also hard to master. You can go online and play with other people. I remember I've been playing Gran Turismo forever, and when I played it the first time in VR, my lap times immediately improved simply because you can look at the apex. So you're driving like this. I'm trying to line up the mic. You're driving and you can turn into the apex and then turn out. So you never really miss it. So you can actually
see it.
Yeah, you can just like you would in real life if you're in a, low car, centered gravity car like a Ferrari.
Right.
And you're taking a left-hand turn, you can actually turn your head to the left and you can see the apex or the corner of the turn, and then you can accelerate out of it. When you are playing a regular Gran Turismo 7, you can't see that corner very well. You have to kind of time it and guess where it is.
Yeah.
But in VR, you can just look at it and see it and never miss it. And I think it just boosts the fun time for me in VR.
That's awesome.
I like to play Gran Turismo for hours, but I can't sit with the VR headset for more than 2 hours, 3 hours.
sometimes the motion of driving a car still bothers me from time to time.
We were playing Contractors, and there's vehicles in that game, and I cannot even get in that car.
When Aaron was driving, I was like, I'm going to shut my eyes in real life.
I had to close my eyes.
Tell me when we're there, because we flipped over our car and we were tumbling, and I was like, yep.
I think we have a video of that I might be able to put in.
That would be awesome.
I get stuck in the passenger, back passenger seat because the door was lodged up against a wall, I think.
No, our car landed sideways.
Oh, it was sideways. I couldn't get out, and I was freaking out because people were shooting at us, and I'm like trying to tell people to like open the car door for me and everything. I was freaking out. It was a lot of fun. Another one of those VR moments, only in VR.
Right.
Yeah, and that's all I have for the games I like to recommend. Maybe there's like a couple more. I think Resident Evil Village and Resident Evil 4 remake in VR are really, really good. It's just, I think a lot of good horror game or good VR games are horror, and I'm not a huge horror fan. I
think they have the Aliens.
Yeah, the Alien one it's on PSVR 2 right now.
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh,
one of the
I don't know if I could play that one.
It's one of the most downloaded games on PSVR 2 right now. Actually, it's probably top 2 or 3. Same with Phasmophobia, which is a game I've never played before, but I've been really anxious to play. It's just about ghost hunting. Yeah. So, 2 more questions for you, Steve.
You got it.
VR has been used for fitness, therapy, education, even job training.
Yep.
What non-gaming applications excite you? I've already explained mine. I like courtside seats and, learning how to do surgery and stuff like that. But any for you?
I would love to see hockey in VR.
Oh, yeah. You mean like ice?
Yeah,
side?
ice hockey. Not playing it, but
yeah, I know what you mean.
But watching hockey in VR would be fantastic. I mean, I already watched the 2D version, but sitting there, middle of the rink, right up against the glass, and watching a hockey game would be pretty fantastic. Yeah. Or picking your seat would be pretty great.
That would be cool. Just the entire experience of going to a sporting event.
Yeah.
Even if right now they have these they're like sticks that sit on the side of the court.
Yeah.
And it's just static, and you just have a 360 view. Eventually, there's going to be some walking robot recording 1 million people watching it, just walking up and down the stairs. And
I've been to a VR concert, and that's pretty great too.
That's crazy. That's funny.
Let's see here.
That's a great idea.
But honestly, hanging out with people in an environment like this, that you don't get to see, maybe like a friend.
You want to play cards?
Yeah. What was it? It's called Vegas something now.
Yeah, but, I know what you're talking about. I have it.
Yeah, the poker game is fantastic. You're just sitting there and you're talking with people. But being able to call or interact with friends or family that don't live next to you, and interacting with like this kind of format that we are right now is fantastic.
Yeah, I like it.
That's one of my favorite applications for VR, to be honest with you.
I have to agree too. I honestly think that I love gaming, but I think that gaming might be holding back VR. This headset I'm specifically wearing, I think it might have always been held back because of a gaming. It's on a gaming platform. It's specifically made for gaming, and I think a lot of people look at VR games. I'm going to show up some video on this podcast, and a lot of it, when you see on a flat screen, it's not low resolution, but low polygon. And it kind of looks like a PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 game sometimes. But it really doesn't do it any justice. It's really about being there is the excitement. I've played games that look like crappy PlayStation 1 games on purpose. But it's just being inside a crappy PS1 looking video game is what is the real fun in it. So things like walking up Mount Everest, and I don't know, visiting flying in a plane, doing something that you can't do ever.
Another great thing is, say you're sitting at a laptop at home or at an airport or whatever, and you only have one screen. There are productivity options where you can have virtual screens to your laptop where you're actually working and being productive. And you have these TVs in front of you and screens that no one else can see. And you're moving windows and mouse and like mousing between them. And you're working and getting stuff done. And then I can walk over to like a drawing board and draw something or put out like an image, and you can walk over from your desk virtually, maybe 1,000 miles away, and we can co-work on a project.
Yeah, it's true.
And talk to each other in VR. And it doesn't matter where we're at on the planet. We're here together.
Yeah, and it only gets better.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to get worse looking. I think that video games are really cool, and the future of video games in VR is a little cloudy because I don't know how well each game sells. I know that Sony, they did the Gorilla made game, Horizon Zero Dawn, made by Gorilla. It's a gigantic budget VR game, and I'm pretty sure it did not sell well at all. And I think that is always lost on these big developers like Sony, Microsoft. They don't know how to make a game cheaply and effective.
Right.
So VR is where a lot of VR games are made from indie developers.
And I think indie games, especially for VR, is going to be the future.
They somehow know how to do it and under budget and on time.
Yep.
But Microsoft and all the big guys, except for Valve, Half-Life Alyx is the prime example of probably the quintessential video game in VR. I've never played it, but I know that Valve does really good VR stuff. And Capcom with Resident Evil, they develop their games in 2D at first, and then they adapt it to VR, and they do a really good job at that. And that's about it in terms of AAA development. Everything else is all indie, and I'm all for it too, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, so last question, Steve. Do you think we'll ever reach full dive VR in the future? And let me explain that. We're sitting in a cyberpunk setting, I guess.
Okay.
Full dive, meaning completely unconscious in the video game or VR world. So maybe think like cyberpunk terms, like a bath full of ice that you plunge into and then jack in. Or do you always think that it's going to have some sort of device over our eyes?
So I think there will be sometime in the future, in the not so distant future, there'll be a device that you put on your head, and you lay down on the couch or in your bed or something like that. And then you can like link your brain to the device and you'll be there.
Yes.
Kind of like, I don't really watch anime, but there was this one anime that's really all about that. And I loved it. And I think that would be the future beyond this in VR in the next 100 years. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that I don't think VR will take over anything. I think it'll just run side by side with things that just work already. Like I don't think VR will just take over video games, and in the future all the kids are playing VR instead of, Madden.
Right.
I just think it'll run alongside everything else. Maybe in the background or maybe like a sidekick version, but it's not going anywhere. The technology is too interesting and too many people are invested in it.
Now, what's interesting is what's happening right now in AI in VR. There could be a room full of people and you might not be able to tell which ones are humans and which ones are AI.
You mean like the avatars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could come up and talk to somebody and they could be AI or they could be a person.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty crazy. I'm really excited for the future of VR. And I mean, I remember thinking about Doom and hearing stories of probably made up stories on the playground of people being like, oh, I know somebody who used the VR and they would look left, right, up and down. They were in the Doom level. And we were like, wow, cool. And now it's, so far beyond that.
Yeah.
And just in a quick amount of time. Well, anyways, thank you, Steve, for coming on. I hope you guys liked our special Active Reload episode 81, or actually just a regular VR episode.
Yeah, it was fun meeting in VR like this. This is great.
Dude, this is super weird. And you're a guy. You are a Call of Duty guy. I've played it. You were the bad guy in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 or 3 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a hard choice between being this or John Wick or Johnny Silverhands.
Or Metal Gear Solid, my boy. Solid Snake.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm default robot. Anyways, Thanks for watching, and thanks, Steve, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.